Attention, chosen one. A truth is emerging that will prove everyone who has been telling you for years that you are ordinary wrong. Write 222 in the comments now, because the blood that runs in your veins does not belong to this world. Maybe when you were a child, you felt different. You couldn't belong in your family, in society, or even in crowds. There is a reason for that. Your lineage is blessed with secrets and an ancient heritage from beyond the stars. What you are about to learn here today will open the door to truths that have been hidden for years. It is time to wake up. All the difficulties you have experienced in the past, the outcasts, the inner restlessness that has always pushed you forward, all this was actually preparing you for this great truth. Get ready now. Your roots are deeper and more extraordinary than you realize. The veil of mystery is being lifted. Together, we will discover the secret of the blood that does not fit in this world. Think of a single lamp burning in a cabin window on a winter night. Its gentle glow is enough to show every weary traveler that warmth still exists, even in the middle of the coldest season. That's how the Spirit works through those chosen by destiny. The ones who carry light into rooms where fear used to rule, who offer steady hope when storms have battered every foundation. Like that lamp, you never made a scene, never demanded attention, but the atmosphere changed because you were there. That's how it begins. The most profound awakenings slip in quietly, soft as dawn. What's remarkable is that the journey was never about forcing anyone to see your value, but simply shining until the fog around them burned away. When you entered their world, you didn't just bring kindness or gentle words. You brought a kind of spiritual durability, an unshakable faith that doesn't get blown out by the winds of gossip or the icy drafts of betrayal. The truth is, you became the living answer to prayers they never dared to speak. Even as they wrapped themselves in chaos, you stood as the living proof that love can outlast any storm. Want to see miracles come alive? Subscribe and witness the wonder in every story. You were like living water in a land of drought, showing that faithfulness isn't just about sticking around when it's easy, but about remaining rooted when the landscape gets rough. They may have mistaken your peace for weakness, but real strength is silent. Your presence was a reminder that God's promises never come with expiration dates. You became a safe harbor in a world of shifting tides, a place where battered hearts could finally rest, even if just for a moment. Each anxious whisper you felt wasn't paranoia, it was intuition. Your soul was reading the weather long before the thunder broke. There's a gift in being able to sense the coming storm before the clouds even gather. Those signals, those hunches, were God's early warnings nudging you towards safety before the flood of revelation swept through and exposed what couldn't be healed by hiding. It's what happens when you're connected to something higher. Protection doesn't always look like walls. Sometimes it's just a gentle nudge in the right direction. They held on to disorder because to them, chaos was familiar. That's what so many people miss. Some folks have learned to make their home in the storm. They may claim to want peace, but deep down, the noise and the drama are what they understand. You didn't just walk in as another friend or lover. You were a weather change, the shift that signals a new season is coming. For those comfortable with darkness, that kind of light is overwhelming. And so, even as they clung to what hurt them, your example showed what it looks like to be truly free. Let's talk about the courage it takes to stand firm in the middle of that confusion. While others hid behind shadows and secrets, You chose clarity. You stayed patient, when the easier path would have been to fight fire with fire. But your grace was never passivity. It was a choice, a daily decision to let your peace speak louder than their chaos. That's what sets chosen ones apart. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. Your presence alone can shift the atmosphere. Every moment you felt alone, every time you wondered why you were different, was actually confirmation that you were built for something greater. Chosen ones aren't picked to blend in. They're set apart to lead by quiet example. Like that lamp in the window, your value is never lost just because the crowd doesn't notice. Sometimes God hides his treasures in plain sight, trusting that the right eyes will see at the right time. As the fog lifted, secrets that had long lurked in the shadows could no longer survive in the light you carried. Those who tried to keep you entangled in their web of confusion were really hoping to pull you down into the same uncertainty. But your roots went deeper. You drew strength from a source they couldn't access, a wellspring of hope and clarity that only grows stronger in adversity. No matter how they spun their stories, you couldn't be swept away by their waves. Your journey became the miracle others needed to see. Not the miracle of escape, but the miracle of endurance. The world is full of people running from trouble, but the true mark of the chosen is the ability to remain calm when everyone else is losing their grip. You transformed fear into faith, not just for yourself, but for those who watched you weather every storm without letting bitterness take root. Think about the power of steadfast love, the kind that refuses to be defined by someone else's chaos. You became the testimony that a steady heart is worth more than 1,000 empty promises. Where others sowed confusion, you planted seeds of clarity. While they built walls, you built bridges. That's how the chosen operate, turning adversity into opportunity, pain into wisdom, and betrayal into fuel for a deeper calling. Even now, as the dust settles and the fog clears, your legacy is being written in the lives you touched, the hope you restored, and the truth you stood for when others preferred lies. You're not just a survivor of someone else's storm. You're the evidence that light is stronger than darkness, that love is greater than fear, and that God's plans cannot be derailed by anyone's dysfunction. You didn't just endure the storm, you became the calm after it. You showed that the greatest freedom isn't in running away, but in standing strong, knowing you're backed by a love that never fails. The road ahead is brighter because you carried the light, even when it seemed like you were walking alone. So if you ever question your impact, remember this. It only takes a single lamp to pierce the night. It only takes one unwavering spirit to remind an entire house that morning is coming. The gift you carry can't be stolen, diminished, or denied. It's the birthright of every chosen soul. Quiet, steady, and world-changing. Keep shining. The world has never needed your light more. Imagine a sturdy oak tree rooted at the center of a clearing, a living promise that no matter how fierce the winds rage, some things are built to last. The oak doesn't boast or sway with every passing storm. It stands, quietly steady, its branches stretched out in silent welcome. This is the presence you brought to their world, a steady, unshakable anchor in the middle of their rolling tempests. In a life shaped by uncertainty, you entered as a gentle rhythm, steady as a heartbeat, offering reassurance that true peace isn't a distant hope, but something that can be lived, moment by moment. It's no wonder they were drawn and unsettled all at once, for your calm was foreign to souls accustomed to chaos. You carried the kind of stillness that's not afraid of the dark, a spiritual light that casts out confusion simply by existing. Your presence became the eye of the storm, calm, centered, the one place where everything made sense, if only for a breath. What they didn't realize is that peace can be just as powerful as thunder. You didn't have to shout, beg, or prove your worth. You became a quiet example of what God's favor really looks like. There's strength in gentle resilience, a kind of invisible armor that protects you without making a scene. The chains of their past couldn't contain the blessing you carried. Every time you forgave, every time you showed patience instead of reacting, you were laying down roots that could outlast their wildest fears. Their pulling away wasn't rejection, it was reverence for something they felt was beyond their reach. Sometimes the heart knows it's standing in the presence of something sacred and steps back, not out of pride, but out of awe. They could not comprehend the ease with which you navigated storms. Your calm unsettled their old patterns. Your reliability exposed the instability of their old ways. It was like showing a restless sea what stillness looked like. The water didn't know what to do with it. Over time, the contrast between what you offered and what they chose will only grow starker. The people who cross their path may offer excitement, distraction, or even temporary comfort, but nothing will replicate the quiet confidence you brought into every room. Like a familiar hymn, your memory will rise in moments when life grows overwhelming, reminding them of a gentler possibility, a peace they once touched but let slip away. They may find themselves searching for your reflection in other faces, listening for your wisdom in the voices of new companions, but the echo of your presence will ring out in the emptiest hours. You were the blessing they didn't know how to keep, the sturdy shelter in a world of shifting tents. And though they may pretend to have moved on, their spirit will always recognize what was lost. That's the sacred burden and gift of the chosen. To be unforgettable, not because of noise, but because of the depth of your offering. You live on as a benchmark for every future encounter, a gentle standard against which all others are measured. No matter how many places their journey takes them, there will always be a longing, a homesickness for the one who showed them that true strength can be silent and true love still. Your legacy is not just in what you endured, but in what you transformed. Where they once ran from peace, you planted seeds of faith. Where they recoiled from stillness, you taught the lesson of rootedness. Your memory will not haunt them as regret alone, but as a beacon guiding them, reminding them that even in a world addicted to noise, the greatest blessing is sometimes the one that stands quietly, unbroken, through every storm. So hold your head high, like that oak in the clearing, and remember, your presence was the miracle they didn't know to pray for. Let your heart rest, knowing that the peace you gave is now a seed in their spirit, one that may yet take root when the time is right. Keep walking forward in your calling, for the world is full of storms that still need the calm only you can bring. Hungry for timeless wisdom? Hit subscribe and feed your soul. Picture a garden overgrown with wild vines. At first glance, it seems like a place where life is thriving. But look closer, and you see how those vines twist and strangle, choking the roots that once promised fruit and beauty. This is the truth you discovered, walking through what looked like an ordinary patch of earth, only to find that beneath the leaves and flowers, the ground was tangled with hidden thorns and secret roots. It's easy for someone on the outside to believe a partnership is simply having a rough season, just needing a bit more sunlight or a drop of rain. But you saw how the very soil was being drained, not nourished. What you stumbled upon was not a story of simple hardship, but a web spun with deliberate care. Each thread a little lie, a carefully disguised omission, a secret allowed to grow unchecked until it formed an entire world apart from the truth. When light finally shined into those tangled places, what came forth wasn't just pain, it was a revelation. It was like pulling up a root and discovering it had wrapped itself around everything, shaping the landscape in ways no one could see from above. The real tragedy wasn't just in what happened, but in how much energy was spent keeping up appearances, patching holes in the fabric instead of tearing out the rot. You witness firsthand how a soul can get lost in its own inventions, turning every conversation into a careful performance, every act of kindness into a strategic move. There was no foundation, only shifting sand. No open windows for fresh air, only locked doors and heavy curtains to keep reality at bay. What looked like a home was really a stage set. Props and backdrops moved into place to impress the unknowing, while behind the scenes, everything creaked and groaned with the weight of secrets. This kind of revelation is a sacred invitation. It calls you not just to grieve the loss of what you hoped for, but to honor the wisdom that kept you from getting further entangled. In the simple act of seeing clearly, you broke the spell that held the story together. Sometimes God steps in, not with thunder, but with clarity, an inner voice that says, "This is not your harvest field." And that knowing, gentle as a summer breeze, is what sets you free. Let this chapter be a living lesson. The most beautiful gardens are the ones where every root is known and every vine is tended with truth. You are being called out of the shadows of confusion into a season of pure growth, where your heart can plant itself in ground that welcomes the light. Don't mourn the garden that was overrun. Rejoice that you were wise enough to walk away before the thorns could pierce any deeper. The stories others choose to live may be shrouded in mist, but your journey is about choosing clear skies and honest soil. You are being led, step by step, out of the maze of illusions and into the open fields of God's blessing, a place where your spirit can stretch out, free and unafraid, and finally grow strong in the warmth of real love. Imagine an old, patched-up quilt covering a drafty house. At first, the fabric seems warm and inviting, hiding the cracks beneath. But with every passing day, a new thread comes loose. A tear here, a hole there. Soon, you notice how the wind sneaks in, whispering the truth the blanket was meant to hide. What seemed like protection was really just postponing the moment when reality would finally break through. This story didn't unravel all at once. The truth arrived like drops of rain, finding their way through a leaky roof. Not in a downpour, but in a steady drip that over time made the ceiling give way. Each small discovery, a forgotten receipt, a strange text, a story that didn't add up, served as a signal. These weren't accidents, but the result of a well-practiced art, hiding the facts just out of reach, adjusting the story each time you looked closer. As you traced the patterns, it became clear that what you were seeing was not the aftermath of a single bad choice, but the fruit of a habit. Like a gardener who weeds only where the neighbors can see, every effort was spent maintaining appearances, never addressing the roots of the problem. The real damage wasn't in a single act, but in the layers of secrecy built up over months, even years, until the whole structure sat on shifting ground. The spiritual lesson here is as timeless as a sunrise. Light will always find the smallest cracks and grow stronger with every revelation. Every mask eventually slips, and the person hiding behind it is faced with the consequences of living in shadows. God doesn't need to send thunder to get your attention. Sometimes the truth just leaks in, gentle and persistent, until you can't ignore it anymore. You didn't just stumble on a secret, you were guided step by step through a field of illusions until the illusion simply couldn't hold. It's as if heaven itself gently tugged each thread, letting the unraveling happen slowly, so your heart would have time to see the pattern and prepare for what was next. There's grace in that process. God won't let you stay lost in a web of deception forever. Now, standing in the clear air, you realize the true miracle wasn't in the uncovering of each individual lie, but in your ability to see through the pattern as a whole. The old blanket has been lifted, and while the room feels a little colder at first, it's also filled with fresh air and honest sunlight. That's how new seasons begin, with the courage to let go of what only ever covered up the truth. Step forward, knowing this. When the Spirit leads you out of confusion, it's never with a rush, but with the patience of one who knows your worth. You are being prepared for a new chapter, where what's real won't need to be hidden, and what's good will never need a mask. In this open field, your heart can finally rest, knowing that God's love has always been stronger than any secret the night could hold. Picture an angel at a crossroads, holding up a lantern as the fog rolls in. Sometimes, that angel doesn't shout or block your way with a mighty hand. They simply nudge you gently, guiding you down a safer path while you're too busy searching the darkness to notice the danger ahead. Every unanswered message, every rescheduled meeting was like a gentle hand on your shoulder, steering you clear of harm's way without ever demanding your attention. The world may tell you that silence is loneliness, that closed doors are a sign of failure, but the Spirit knows better. It's like God sending rain on a day you plan to travel, not to ruin your plans, but to keep you from driving into a storm you could not have seen coming. Those delays, those unexpected changes, they were never about keeping you out. They were about keeping you safe. When you look back, you'll see the pattern. Moments that once left you confused or doubting your worth were actually shields raised around your heart. Heaven was working overtime to make sure you weren't caught in a whirlwind that was never yours to weather. In fact, every pause, every missed connection was a holy interruption, grace disguised as inconvenience. There's a simple kind of wisdom in this, one that fits right into the rhythm of everyday life. Sometimes, the most loving answer isn't a yes or a no, but a soft delay, a divine not yet. The Spirit leads us away from the fire before we even smell the smoke, putting roadblocks where we would have rushed in without a second thought. That's how the chosen are protected, not with thunderbolts or blazing signs, but with quiet rerouting that only makes sense in hindsight. So next time a door closes or a plan falls apart, remember, you are not being left behind. You're being carried forward by hands that see the end from the beginning. Even in the smallest details, you are watched over, loved, and sheltered from storms meant for someone else. Your story is a living testimony that every divine delay has a purpose, and that purpose is always your greater good. Imagine a mighty tree standing alone after the storm. Its branches, once heavy with leaves, now stripped bare by winds it thought it could withstand. For years, the shade of secrecy was its shelter. Strong, proud, and seemingly untouchable. But when the whirlwind came, it carried off every brittle leaf of deception, revealing a trunk scarred by choices and alliances that couldn't hold. The forest, once thick with friendly cover, has thinned, and now the tree stands exposed under the wide open sky, roots gripping soil that feels less certain than ever. There's a spiritual law woven through all of this. What's done in the shadows will always come into the light, just as the sun rises faithfully after even the longest night. Those who hid behind the thickets of secrecy now find their names drifting through the air like gossip on a Sunday porch, no longer sheltered by silence, but isolated by the very tales that once offered protection. The old partnerships, built on convenience and concealed motives, have crumbled into dust, scattering in the wind while everyone watches. Ready for twists, secrets, and ancient mysteries? Subscribe and start the adventure. No amount of strategy or image building can preserve what wasn't anchored in truth. The stories spun to defend reputations have become the very rumors that travel from neighbor to neighbor, leaving the former insiders to face a new kind of solitude. Instead of circles of support, there are only questions echoing through empty halls, regrets settling like dew on the grass after a hard rain. But here's the simple wisdom. In the spiritual journey of a chosen one, community and belonging are never lost for good, only redefined. What falls away is meant to make space for something more honest, more lasting. The loss of shallow alliances is the beginning of true connection, where regret softens into humility and the soul learns to grow again, even after the fiercest season has passed. So when you see the dust swirling and stories shifting, remember, God's grace isn't just in the clearing away, but in the gentle, steady hand that guides new roots to deeper soil. Every ending is a clearing for a new beginning, and every regret can become the seed of wisdom if you let it take root in good ground. Meanwhile, possibility is blooming in your world. Where there was confusion, there is now clarity. Where there was heartbreak, a garden of new connections begins to grow. People drawn to your strength and sincerity are stepping into your orbit, ready to offer the kind of respect and commitment that was always your birthright. You are no longer waiting at closed doors. You are opening new ones. The difference between you and what you left behind is as stark as fresh water compared to poison. The loyalty, honesty, and depth you brought are impossible to counterfeit, and the realization of this truth frees you from any shadow of self-doubt. They failed to recognize the rare gift that stood before them, and you are no longer defined by their inability to see your worth. As the world they built on fragile foundations tumbles down, new opportunities rise to meet you. Well-being flows in, replacing anxiety with assurance, and you find yourself thriving where you once only survived. Your transformation becomes not just a personal triumph, but a signpost for others that healing and happiness are not only possible, they're inevitable when you honor your true value. Anyone seeking to return to your life now faces a different person, one shielded by new boundaries and wisdom born of hard-won experience. You are no longer willing to be someone's contingency plan or afterthought. What you offer is precious and reserved for those who recognize its value from the beginning. This chapter of your journey is not just about recovery, it's about becoming a lighthouse for others. Your courage, patience, and commitment to your own well-being light the way for anyone seeking a path out of their own confusion. The legacy you build from here is one of hope, proof that dignity and self-love will always open the door to a brighter, more abundant future.